Welcome to the Dark Zone, an adventure racing podcast.
If you're an accomplished trail runner or ultra runner or avid hiker and you go out in these wilderness areas, you're limited to the trails. And there's a whole world out there in between the trails. And that, to me, that's the appeal. That's the appeal of adventure racing. You don't miss anything.
Well, for me, the action is the juice. I'm in.
I need you, brother. Please, Sensei, please.
Courage, Bob. Courage.
That's it.
Courage. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. Hey, thank you, Sensei. Thank you, Sensei. Thank you.
Say the word, Chef.
What a rip.
The Dark Zone is so excited for the return of one of the original Adventure Addicts races. That's right, folks. Break the Habit is back in 2026 and heading to the mountains of beautiful West Virginia. On May 30th and 31st, teams will take on to 24 to 30 hours of trekking, pack rafting, mountain biking, and elite navigation in Pocahontas County, one of the most rugged and adventurous regions in the whole state. We're talking about the heart of the Monongahela National Forest, 5 state parks, 2 state forests, 400 miles of trails, legendary mountain biking, and free-flowing rivers. It's a true playground for adventure racing. Like all Adventure Addicts events, Break the Habit is designed to let teams create their own adventure. You'll choose routes that match your ability, but make no mistake, smart strategy and top-notch navigation will determine who conquers the full course. And yes, it is both a USARA and AR World Championship qualifier. Looking for big terrain, real navigation, and that classic Adventure Addict spirit, Break the Habit should be on your calendar. You can find the link in the show notes or at adventureaddictsracing.com. That's right, folks. One word, adventureaddictsracing.com. Good luck, and we'll see you in West Virginia. Adventure Enablers, the leader in adventure race tracking, timing, and race directing, brings you the 2026 Shenandoah Epic Adventure Race, April 11th to the 12th. Registration is now open for the 15th year of one of the East Coast's longest-running 24-hour adventure races. Trek, bike, paddle, and navigate through Virginia's stunning Shenandoah Valley and the rugged Massanutten Mountain Range. New for 2026, multiple transitions that'll keep you moving and strategizing for the full 24 hours. Whether you're an AR veteran or hungry for your first epic challenge, this is your rite of passage. Push limits, chase sunrises, write your story in the wild. Register now at adventureenablers.com. That's one word, adventureenablers.com. All right, folks, welcome to the Dark Zone, episode 150. I can't believe it either. 150 times we've done this, and we are just so happy and so proud to be part of the adventure racing community, so thanks for being here. Now, for longtime listeners, episode 50 was adventure racing legend Nathan Fade, right? Nathan was Nathan Babe Ruth, a fantastic, great person to have on. 100 was Grant Killian, who's the famous Untamed New England race director. He was a white whale for me, a Moby Dick. I had to get this guy on the show, and Grant did a great job. And Grant, I know you're listening. Just tell me when you want to do the race again, and I'm there. For 150, we get a little personal. Dan Brannen is the guest in episode 150. And if you're an adventure racer on the East Coast, and if you know ultra running, you know Dan. He was my first adventure race partner. And in the episode, we tell the story of how we met and what our introduction was like and our relationship has been. And I have such true affection for Dan, and I so wanted him to be episode number 150 for a very, very long time. I'll let Dan speak for himself about his accomplishments and things he's done over the course of his life. He's just a wonderful ambassador for adventure racing and ultra running and race directing and for the sport. We are fortunate to have him on the Dark Zone. So Dan, thanks for coming on the show. For everybody who's going to listen to this, I am delighted that you're going to get to meet Dan Brannen, adventure racing legend, my first teammate, and most importantly, my friend. Enjoy the episode. So the story for the listeners at home is that back in 2012, I think it was, Dan, I was looking to get into adventure racing.
2011.
I had done a lot of ultra endurance stuff, and I reached out to NYRA, New York Adventure Racing Association, and Denise Mast. And I said, I think I want to try adventure racing. And she said, well, there's this guy named Dan who needs a partner. And you were my first adventure racing partner. And that's why you're Dark Zone guest number 150. Do you want to pick the story up there?
Well, let's see. Yes, it was in the area of the Catskills, right?
Yes.
Was it the
Belner Mountain, I believe.
Yeah, that right. We started there. Yeah, it was in the Catskills, and part of the course was on what's it called? The Devil's Path.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, it was.
And we had not met. The first time we met was when you walked into our hotel room.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Adventure racing.
Yeah.
The way we do it, right? I'd never done a race before. I never met you. Let's share a room together.
I think it was a 30-hour race.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. And we kicked it off, and we had we did okay, but we worked, we were like natural teammates, I think, right from the start.
Yeah. And I look back with such fondness to that. And that's why I wanted you to be number 150. Right. I wanted to commemorate that. And only because of you that we're all here today, right? Because I had such a good experience with you as a teammate that first race.
It was, yeah.
It was
memorable. Was that the one where you we weren't sure where we were,
yes.
and we were with another team.
Yes.
Can I tell the story?
Please tell the story. Go ahead. This is a very good story. Go ahead.
We were with another. We were kind of in the same area as another team, going back and forth, and none of us were sure where we were. And we followed a little trail off of the main trail down into a parking lot, which then led to a road. And I looked on the map and I said, I think now that we're in this parking lot and it's taking us to a road, I think I can find out where we are on the map. And so I said, I'm sure we're here. And the other guys on the other team said, no, we can't be there. And we're going back and forth. And then you shouted out, I know where we are. Pointed to a house up the street and said, I grew up in that house.
Exactly. And that was the adventure racing gods in my first race. Put me on a course past my family summer house in the Catskills. And that was a sign from above that I should be doing adventure racing.
Yes.
And if I remember that story correctly, those guys went off on their own the wrong way and then continued racing. And so clearly the introduction to adventure racing with you was so fond and so great and such a great teammate. But adventure racing really for you and the scope of your life and the things that you've done, adventure racing came relatively late to you.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about your upbringing and what you got involved in with all of your running. Because it's a fascinating story, and it's a big story, and it's a lot of years. But you're a very, very accomplished runner in your own right.
I had my moments, but not until I got into the really ultra long distances. I started out. I went to high school in Philadelphia, and I remember the first day of high school, the principal was giving us the talk and welcoming us, and he said, we want every student to take part in one athletic and one non-athletic extracurricular activity. I said, oh, and I was a shrimpy little kid. And I said, wow, okay. Hey, I mean, I played Little League baseball, and ran a little bit of pee-wee track. And one of the upperclassmen said, I go out for cross country. Everybody goes out for cross country. I went out for cross country. And I can't say I loved it because it was very hard, but it got under my skin. From very early on, my feeling was, I can't not do this. This is what I have to try to keep doing. And I had zero success. I was like one of the slowest guys on the freshman team, and I continued that through my high school team. Through my high school years, being one of the slowest guys on the JV team until my senior year when we got a new coach who lit a fire under all of us and was one of the two or three most influential men in my life. What
was his name?
Larry Simmons, rest in peace.
What did he do that was so special?
He was able to motivate everyone on the team in different ways. He challenged us. He was an interesting combination of kind of like the Herb Brooks character in the story of the U.S. hockey team. Yes. Like who he would challenge you and you'd almost think that he was challenging you too much, and yet he would show his other side and be very supportive of you. And he just instilled in all of us, and certainly in me, a belief that we could improve and we could continue improving. And I did. I worked my way my senior year through the JV team, through the varsity team. I scored on the varsity team. And after that, I said, that's it. I got to keep doing this. I got to go to a college with a cross-country program, and I did.
So do you think, and I don't want to get ahead of the answer, but do you think that if he didn't enter your life, you would not have been on the path that you've been on all these
That is a
years?
damn good question. I think it's questionable. I think it's questionable.
He was the right person at the right time.
Yeah.
But in order for him to get there, you had to put up with years of, dare I say, mediocrity, right?
Yeah. It was. I was. There's nothing memorable about my years up to halfway through my senior year in high school, other than the fact that I just stayed on the team.
Right.
And
You were just there.
And I just wanted to do it. I wanted to keep doing it, and I wanted to be faster, but I didn't. The possibility of getting faster and working to make myself faster just was never. It seemed like it wasn't an option.
Gotcha. And then he showed up.
He showed up, and
he had a certain style.
Yeah,
He sprayed
like
magic pixie
just like
dust.
opened up a whole new world for me.
And so obviously you got a taste of that success your senior year. Where'd you go to college?
Bucknell University. And one of the reasons I went there is because, I visited a couple colleges, and I just, walking around the campus, and I bumped into the cross-country coach who was brand new. It was the first year. It was his first year, and it was the first year of the program. Up until that was 1970. 1970 when I was, visiting colleges. I graduated in 71. And I just happened to bump into him and, told him that I was interested in continuing running. And he didn't even ask me. He didn't know who I was. He didn't ask me. He just encouraged me to come there and become part of the team. And I found out later he just started the program the year before. Bucknell had a track team, but it never had a cross-country team.
Right.
He just started the program there. I went there obviously as a walk-on. Nobody would have recruited me. And I just got in on the ground floor of a phenomenal program. He built a dynasty. 3 years after he got there, his cross-country team won the IC4A championship.
So once again, the universe just sort of entered your life at the right time.
Yeah. He was, like I said, 2 or 3 men in my life, adult men as I'm growing up, were the most influential. And 2 of them were my cross-country coaches. Right. I'm blessed,
The power of coaching someone's life.
Yeah. And this guy, his name was Art Goulden, also R.I.P., and he built this phenomenal program, and he did it with no scholarships. I think for years he was Bucknell was the only school who qualified a team for the NCAA Division I national championship with no scholarships.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Right.
And now I wasn't that good. I spent most of my time on the JV team, but I improved dramatically. And then my senior year, I actually scored for the varsity, but it didn't quite last. I couldn't make it last to the championship, but that's okay. And I was fortunate. I graduated college at the beginning of the running boom.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. The idea that you all of a sudden, so here you are now. You have the high school experience, the college experience, and then society. Running just took off in the 70s.
Yeah. It was that. It was the days of iconic figures like Jerry Lindgren, Steve Prefontaine, and especially Frank Shorter winning the Olympic marathon in 1972. That really kicked it off. So I get out of college. If I had gotten out of college 4, 6, 8 years earlier, there would have been very few opportunities. I get out of college, and within a few years, all of a sudden, there's road races all over the place. And that was my opportunity. I always did better performance-wise and competitively the longer the distance.
Well, you were saying that before, in the notes that you sent me, and we were chatting a bit about this, is that while you were a runner and you did marathons, your career really took off at the bigger distances.
Yes, when I get into ultras, yeah. I had some decent performances.
Well, you ran what was your fastest marathon? Was it one? Did I read it right? It was 131. Marathon.
231.
231 was your fastest marathon.
Was my fastest marathon, and my fastest half marathon, which is probably the best race of my life, was 1:10 for the half marathon.
So 13. So you covered 13 miles in an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that, I ran 1:10 for the half marathon. I didn't even make the top 25 in the race.
It's all relative, right? Compared to the rest of the world, you're speedy to that group. It's like, yeah, okay, buddy.
And then I heard and read about ultra marathons, and I always liked going out and doing, even in college, I'd go out and do 20-mile runs. I'm a natural lone wolf type who just likes to keep going and going and going. And I didn't get to the point where I said that's it. I don't want to go any. I never got to that point where I said I don't want to go any further. It was brand new territory to be explored, and so I found out about ultras, and I took the plunge in 1978. I think the Knickerbocker 60-kilometer in Central Park, 6 loops of Central Park.
Okay,
and I did fairly well. And then my breakthrough was only shortly after that, 1980. I won the JFK 50 mile in Maryland, which was the oldest and largest ultra in the country.
The JFK in ultra running circles, that race is spoken of as the hallowed race, right?
Yeah.
Sacred ground.
Yeah.
So how are you able to, it's interesting, right? Because, these days, and they'll say, we talk all about these different hacks and things runners do, and the protein they eat and the sleep they get and the shoes they wear and all their clothing. What was it like back in those days? Was it training, just strap them on and run a lot?
When I ran my personal best marathon, Boston Marathon, 1979, not only were there no clocks on the course, there were no times given. There were no split times on the course. There were no mile marks, and there were no water stations.
So you just got to start running.
Yeah. People would just hand you water from the side. They had spectators who would hand you water from the sidelines. So
there was no marching band. It was just get on and run for 26 miles. When it's over, it's over.
Yeah, So
what was your weekly training like? So back when you were doing the marathon, doing the ultras, how many miles were you putting down a week in training for the ultras?
I didn't do any more miles per week than when I was at my peak training for marathons and sub-marathon road races. I followed a program of periodicity where you ramp up, and then you have a racing season, and then you cut back and you take some easy time. I never took time off, but it takes some easy time.
You rest, you recharge your body.
And my training always, my whole life was one easy day a week.
And what would an easy day, at the height of your speed, what would an easy day look like?
An easy day would be a single 5-mile easy run. But other than that, though, in those my peak years, mid 70s to early 80s, I was running religiously twice a day. Sometimes 3 times a day. And I was doing long runs up to 45 miles. And I was, my weekly mileage ranged between, for 3 to 4 months at a time, between 100 miles a week and 140 miles a week.
So as the JFK 50 miler, you said that was that your proudest ultra moment? Like, what did it get bigger?
Boy, I'll tell you.
2-day races, a 50 miler in the pantheon of your performance was nowhere near the longest that you've run at one single time.
No, and that was, the JFK, the first, there's a funny story about it. When the gun went off at the start of the race, I was in a porta potty.
That's 50 miles though. You got room to make up, right? Wasn't a 5K.
I'm the only person in the history of the race that passed the entire field.
That's right. You started dead last and you came in first.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I made up most of it. I've always been a like a mountain goat, like unbreakable ankles, and I love in cross country. I love the more rugged the course, the more I loved it, and the better I did.
Right.
And JFK, the first 16 miles are on the Appalachian Trail,
right,
on a very rocky section,
hiking trail
of the Appalachian Trail. And I think that I never ran a flat road or track 50 mile that compared, because even at 50 miles, I wasn't fast enough.
Right.
So I had my greatest success when I went up to 24 hours and then up into multi-day races. I briefly held, again, being at the right place at the right time, briefly held for 2 months the American record for the 48-hour run. That was 223 plus miles. But the event was in its infancy. And that's that record has gone way, way beyond what I did.
So just for the audience who are doing the math in their head, it was a 48-hour. The race course was open for 48 hours.
Yes.
It was how many miles you could cover inside 48 hours?
Yes, on a track, on an indoor track.
On an indoor track.
Yes.
And of those 48 hours,
yes,
how many of those hours were you in motion?
Little under 44.
Okay, so you slept roughly on and off.
I took brief rests, and so I was on the track moving for 43. More than 43 and a half hours.
And you held the course. You held the national record for that.
2 months later, it was broken.
How many people were in that race with you? And did you remember?
Probably 2 dozen.
So 24 of you. Indoor track.
Yeah. And then I did a couple of 6-day races. My best one was actually at an invitational 6-day race in France, again on an indoor track, and that was my best 6-day was 468 miles.
Okay.
And then that got me invited to the Sydney to Melbourne 1,000-kilometer race in Australia. But I broke down. My knee gave out at halfway. I was running in 5th place. It was a pretty strong international field, but my knee gave out.
So compare with me. Obviously, you have the physical capacity to do this, right? You have ankles of iron. You talked about.
Yeah.
You're built like a runner. For those who are at home, Dan is a typical distance runner, right?
Yeah.
You're by no means are you short, but you're not tall and you're wiry, right? There's not a lot of so you feel physically you brought a lot to the table physically, lung capacity.
Yeah.
But clearly, it's the mental game that lets you succeed at that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'm cut out for it mentally.
Right. So what would you, so the most common question that people ask when they hear about events like this is like, well, what do you think about that entire time? Or how do you keep yourself focused? What did you do?
Yeah, that's a good question. When people find out that I did these multi-day races on a track, and it's on an indoor track, that's like, everybody asks me, well, wasn't it boring? That's the most common. No, it's the last thing it was. Well, the last thing, no.
Me too, real quick.
Yeah.
Did you run the same direction the entire time?
No. When you're running,
right?
Yeah, when you're running on tracks, especially indoor tracks, you reverse direction every 2 to 4 hours.
Right. Okay.
I mean, everybody. In other words, 2 hours into the race, okay, somebody's out there on the track. Okay, now turn around and reverse direction.
Okay.
You complete a lap and then you reverse direction.
Gotcha. I didn't want to stop you, but you were
no. Especially on indoor tracks, because otherwise you're gonna have all sorts of problems.
Yours turning left.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So you were talking about the mental aspect. I apologize. I interrupted.
No, it's you're always well. First of all, for periods of time, you get into a zone. You really get into a zone. It's like meditating, and that can last pretty long. But it doesn't. I mean, you take breaks and you plan your breaks, and also your nutrition. And every event was a learning experience. You got to take in a lot of calories. You got to figure out how to take them in. You got to figure out what agrees with you, what doesn't agree with you. And you're thinking about that and you're planning it. And especially the really neat thing about when you're being competitive, when you're in a pretty competitive event and you're, on a track for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, you're never more than 100 yards from your competition.
Right.
You always know where your competition is. And you can see your competition, like you could see them falter, and that gives you a shot of adrenaline. Right. You could keep track. Right. You could keep track of where everybody is. You could plan your breaks accordingly. So no, it's a lot going on.
It's almost as far away as you can possibly get from adventure racing.
Yes. Yes.
Because adventure racing, well, we kind of don't know where anybody else is in the course. We don't know what checkpoints they punch.
I also, because I'm a natural born trail runner, and the rockier, the more gnarly the trail, the better I do. I also did those 100-mile trail runs. I did all the classic 100-milers. I did the Western States 100. I did the Massanutten 100-miler down in Virginia. I did the Old Dominion 100-miler. I did the Wasatch 100-miler in Utah. I never performed well in those. I always something always caused me to falter, but I did them.
Right.
and I enjoyed them. I just happened to have more success at the events that I'm not necessarily physically as well cut out for.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, that's the irony, right? The things that you. Yeah,
but the fact that I love the trails,
right,
is really, really what then got me into adventure racing. You know, along the way there was another step. My wife, who was a very accomplished triathlete, inspired me to try triathlons. And I did a few, and I enjoyed them. The only problem was I couldn't swim. And literally couldn't swim. Right. So I taught myself how to swim at the age of 44. I got in the pool and I said, whenever I had gotten in a pool before, panic set in, you know, I could doggy paddle my way across a pool and that's it. But no, it took a while, but I just said to myself, you're going to figure out how to do this and do it. And then I was able to take part in triathlons, which I enjoyed. But it was only shortly. In fact, my first adventure race was almost kind of like halfway between a triathlon. Well,
so what was your first adventure race?
It was, it wouldn't even qualify today as an adventure race. It was called the 2-Day Tango in Western Pennsylvania. And it was, let me see if I can recall the events in order. It started out in a little podunk downtown, and the first event, the first discipline was a 21-mile run, which started out on roads and then went on to jeep trails and trails and went over 3 mountains. So 21-mile run. The event was held in June. 21-mile run, hilly trails. You come into a transition area. Next event, okay, adventure racers, you ready for this? Triathletes, you ready for this? 4.7-mile river swim in 53-degree water.
And just the water swim.
Well, full body wetsuit.
Right. Full body. Still, yeah, but there's, you're in a river for.
And you're going with the current.
Right.
You know, but followed by a 36-mile bike. And some people use road bikes and some people use mountain bikes because part of it was gravel. And then, so that's the third event. And the fourth event was 26-mile paddle. 26-mile paddle, kayak paddle. And then
was it a solo event or was it teams?
It was both. Most people did it as solo, but it was also done as relays.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And then what was that? That's a fourth. Then there was a point-to-point orienteering section, which that was my first shot at orienteering. Fortunately, it was really, really easy, but it was harder than I expected it to be. And then the final event was a 9.5-mile road run back into the little town where you started.
Right.
And my claim to fame in that is I was in my early 50s was I set the course record for the 9.5-mile road run.
That section, right. So you came to adventure racing in your 50s?
Yes. Yeah, in my 50s. That was my... It sort of qualifies as an adventure race. It doesn't qualify as a triathlon.
Right. It's just this Frankenstein's monster of a race.
Yeah, and then there was a group called Genesis Adventures who organized a series of short 3 to 4 to 5 hour sprint adventure races, and I thought, well, this is a good opportunity for me to get further into it, and that was a great intro. Yeah, and then my first real adventure race. Oh, I'm embarrassed. I where you have to have teammates.
Right.
I should have done my homework. I can't even remember. It was probably. Oh no. I remember. It was the. Now I do.
It was you with the Russian.
No. That's okay. I'll get to that. That was a winter race. That was a cross country skiing race. 2004. I teamed up with a friend who had done adventure races. His name was Scott Dahl, and we went down to Virginia. There was a group called Odyssey Adventure Racing. You might know the name Don Mann.
Yes,
Don Mann went on to do that big kind of eco challenge type race out west. But he started out with Odyssey.
Yeah, that was Don Mann. Don Mann, who's also He's a wish list guest of the Dark Zone. He was one of the early creators of event racing in the country.
Yep. And I think he was a Navy SEAL.
Yes.
And he was involved in getting Navy SEAls into doing adventure races.
Yes. Yep.
The Odyssey 2-day endorphin fix, 2004. But we didn't do. My teammate was a good adventure racer, but he wasn't a navigator. And my navigation was still in its infancy.
Gotcha. So you had to grow into that skill set.
Yeah, we kind of muddled our way through it, and then we bailed halfway.
So you mentioned the navigation. Clearly, you had the cardiovascular capacity. Clearly, you had the teamwork capacity. So was really nav your biggest delta, the biggest thing you had to grow as a racer, or was there another thing you had to work on?
Yes. And then I found out, I found a couple of orienteering clubs, and I did some orienteering events to sharpen my nav skills. And then I kind of, after a while, I really got the knack of it.
Yeah. That's the most important thing. I always tell newer adventure racers, and if you're new and you're listening to this podcast, go find a local orienteering club and get a map in your hand and practice
that
walking
really
around.
Helped.
Build that sense of the 2-dimensional paper to the 3-dimensional world. Build that capacity.
Yep.
Now I don't want to come out of. We're going to come back to AR in a second, but I do want to point out you were inducted into the Ultra Running Hall of Fame.
Yes, the American Ultra Running Hall of Fame. Yeah, just recently.
And that was due not only to your racing, but also to your leadership in the field. Primarily,
because even though I had some successes at ultra running, my ultra running accomplishments, my athletic accomplishments, would not have gotten me into to the Hall of Fame. I mean, there were always a dozen or even 24 American ultra runners when I was at my peak who were considerably better than I was, and but it's because it was pretty early on. My peak ultra years were, I guess, 1978 to 1986, and right in the middle of that is when I got involved in the organization. I mean, ultra running was an orphan sport. The International Federation didn't recognize it. The American Federation at the time, it was the AAU, and then it was transformed into the Athletics Congress, and then now it's USA Track and Field. It's the same federation, but they had a couple ultra championships on the books. They recognized the 50 mile and the 100 mile, and they had national records, but they were. It was really kind of like a little bit of patronizing, and there was no representation.
Right. Well, they probably saw those distances, and they probably saw that challenge, and it much like with a large part of the bigger population, they just couldn't wrap their heads around it, so they paid no attention to it.
Yeah. And so I started networking with one guy in the United States who was very involved in kind of starting a network of ultra runners and like chain of communication, and then another guy in England. The Americans was really a seminal figure. His name was Nick Marshall, and then I got involved and started to get into communication with a gentleman in England whose name was Andy Milroy, and the two of them were probably the most influential people globally in creating this international network. And then I kind of fit naturally into it, and I went to a national convention of the federation, and I brought with me a whole bunch of proposed changes to the rule book to add more ultras and to add representation for ultras, and it was all accepted.
Right.
It's just, it was like the track and field people weren't necessarily opposed to it. They just, no one had ever approached them.
Well, it's funny that you say that, right? Because very often there's a bit of human nature there, right? Because we tend to think ill of people who oppose us. In reality, they were just ignorant.
Yes.
They didn't know. Yeah. They just didn't know. And once they knew, they were like, hey, Dan, thanks for coming. Great idea. And off we go.
And so, that resulted in the formation of an ultra running subcommittee of USA Track and Field, which later merged with the mountain running group, and it's a vibrant part of the federation. And we got in touch with a couple other. There was a guy in Spain was a guy in Germany, there was a guy in France, there was a guy in Australia, and the five or six of us, people came and went. Eventually, a guy in Japan too. We really created an international network, and we created an international. It wasn't really a federation. It was called the International Association of Ultra Runners, and the International Federation at the time was called the IAAF, International Association of Athletics Federations. Those are the ones that rule track and field around
They were
the
the
world.
governing body.
We applied to them, and they gave us their blessing. And so I was one of I was just in the right place at the right time, and I was very involved in that. I was.
Well, that appears to be a common theme, by the way, in your life. Right place, right time.
That's
Right?
Yeah.
Right. The coach shows up when you're in high school.
That's right.
The coach
Yes.
shows up when you're in college. Right? You run into Joyce. You married Joyce. She's
That's right.
triathlon,
That's right. I ran into her at an ultra marathon.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And so you, in many ways, you could have made your own luck.
I suppose so. Yeah.
Right. And so therefore, when the time came to nominate people for the Hall of Fame, you were an obvious choice because of all your leadership and your stewardship.
I mean, I was. Yeah. I was for the first 10 years of its existence, I was the general secretary of that organization, and I kind of drove the communications and the travel, and we actually created the World 100-kilometer Championship. We created the World 24-hour Championship, and I went to them. I was still active as a competitive ultra runner, but by then I wasn't. I went to the World Championship as an administrator, as a almost a governing body figure. I was the organizer of the USA national team for like 6 years in a row. During those years, if I had entered, even at my best training as a participant, I would not have been a factor. Right. But it turns out that I had.
Well, you had a bigger skill set, though, because once the physical capacity transitioned away, you had the love of the sport. You had your own personal capacity to organize things. Yeah. Next thing you know, you're involved in the governing bodies.
And I was
you bring the sport forward.
I always had a writing ability. I actually wrote in the early years. I wrote for 2 running magazines. I wrote for Running Times, and I wrote for Runner's World. Which still probably that was way back in the 70s, and I wrote for Ultra Running magazine. I had a writing style which came naturally to me, which enabled me to communicate in a persuasive way with other. It just came naturally, as I say. And so I was kind of like, of all of the 6 of us who were like organizing this international group, I was the one who wrote the most and whose writings they used to move the sport ahead. And that's really what got me inducted into the American Ultra Running Hall of Fame.
And then you clearly, so it's almost like your life is a series of phases along the way, right?
Yeah.
And then you came across the adventure racing. What boxes did it tick off for you? Because you've done a lot of adventure races. Like what did you find here that kept you here?
It has to be the navigation and how to put this in. Not only the navigation, but if you're an accomplished trail runner or ultra runner or avid hiker, and you go out in these wilderness areas, you're limited to the trails. And there's a whole world out there in between the trails. And that, to me, that's the appeal of adventure racing. You don't miss anything.
Right. Well, the playground gets huge.
Yeah.
Right. Because when you do the JFK 50, for example, it's beautiful, but that's 50 miles on a trail that they put out in front of you. Off you go.
Exactly.
Whereas with adventure racing, it's so much more expansive.
Yeah. Going off trail and then back up. And also I always enjoyed map reading, and the map reading, and then the fact that you could actually navigate your way through things where there's no roads and no trails. So yeah, that and also the opportunity to constantly be dealing with the unexpected.
Right. In a good way, the chaotic, dynamic, kinetic nature.
Yeah, you don't get that. You don't get that in anything. You don't get that in running. You don't get that in swimming. You don't get that in cycling. You don't get that in triathlon. You get it constantly in adventure racing.
Right. So the fact that the course is in front of you, the map is in front of you, you have your teammates, and anything can happen along the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And not anything can happen, and there's always a challenge to get yourself out of it.
Right, when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
So when you think back across so you picked up adventure racing in your 50s, and you're 70 now, right? So your adventure racing.
I'm 72.
72.
I'm
So
72.
20 years of adventure racing.
Yeah, let's see. 2000 what? I think 2001 was, and 2002 was when I did that 2-day tango.
Gotcha.
So, and my first real adventure race for, more than just a few hours was 2004. So yeah, I'm going into my third decade of it.
Your third decade of it.
Yeah.
And so walk us through. I remember years ago you told me a story about a race that a train showed up to bring you to the start. Do you remember that race?
Oh yeah, that was my teammates were Murray Rosinski and Dorinda Hamilton, and we qualified for the national championship. We did a 12-hour, the Niagara 12-hour, again in the Catskills, and we found out. We were surprised to find out that it qualified us for the national championship. We went to the national championship in North Georgia, and everybody. There was an old scenic railroad. I think the town was Blue Ridge, Georgia. I think Blue Ridge was the name of the town in Georgia, and everybody got on the train, and they took us to start the race by train.
That was that was just a great start of the race, right?
Yeah.
We've been on ferries, we've been in buses. We're now on the ticket train there. So when has a race gone really, really well for you? What's your biggest adventure racing success?
There was what year was it? 2007. For a number of years, I teamed up with my friend Murray Rosinski. We finished. We won the 2-man and finished 4th overall in. There was an organization at the time called Goals, Goals, Gibbons Outdoor something or other, organized by Bill Gibbons, who a few years ago passed away. Rest in peace. And
I
very
well loved, very well known, and organized.
Yeah,
A lot of Goals alumni are race directors now themselves.
Oh yeah, for sure, yeah. And that was June of 2007, and we cleared the course, and we were just on the whole time. We were just on the whole time. We had a few blips, but we overcame them. We overcame each one, and that was almost flawless. And we were very close to some big name teams. As I said, we won the 2-man, finished 4th overall. Not that far behind first.
And then the other kind of clicking, right? Everything feels good. The maps are working well. The body feels good. All the machinery's holding together.
And then, but the best one was I'm an avid cross country skier. Actually, right now, cross country skiing is my number one sport. And there was what organization was it? Central New York Orienteering, maybe.
CNY.
Every year they did an event called Snowgate, which was 2 back-to-back 8-hour days, daylight only. I really like that. I really like the fact that you're limited. You had to make the cutoff each day, and then you stay wherever you're staying. But it's not like the Stockville is.
Yeah,
where you could go to a motel.
Well, they were early forebearer of stage racing, which is very popular now.
Yeah,
the fact that there's like Raid the Rockies now, the Dogs team is her race. It's a 3. I believe it's 3 days of 3 12-hour stages.
And I think Mark Latanzi does one of those, doesn't he?
Yes.
He just introduced it. Yeah.
Yep.
But it was in the snow belt of the east. It was in Winona Forest, which is just north of Syracuse, which gets the highest annual snowfall east of the Rocky Mountains.
Right.
And it was a winter wonderland. It was fantastic. And funny thing about it was, I really, really wanted to do it, but they did not allow solos. And so I networked actually through my ultra running contacts. And I got a response from a guy who said, "Hey, my son's an avid cross country skier." Well, so I got in touch with his son. We met for the first time. This sounds familiar.
Right.
The day before the race.
It's a pattern.
The day before the race. And also, I think it was maybe 2 days before the race. This is in upstate New York. The race director contacted us and said, "Hey, I got somebody that's looking for a team. He was a postdoc student in astrophysics from Russia, who was
He's a real underachiever.
who was an avid skier. And we said, well, what the hell? Yeah.
Send him in, right? We'll figure it out.
His name was Eugene. I don't even remember his last name. So the three of us, total strangers, won the race.
Another interesting story, right?
Yeah.
You meet on the start line and off you go.
Yeah.
And so when you think about it, Dan, so now there's a pattern when it comes to you and to other people, is that when they want someone to enter the sport, they think about Dan Brannen. And I'm a living example of that, right? Denise Mast thought of me, connected right away, and here we are, how many years later now? 14 years later, 15 years later, we're sitting here having this conversation. What is it about your personality? What do you bring to the sport that make people think of you automatically as a good teammate?
Well, yeah, you have to ask them. There you go. You answer it. See, I'm in general in my life, both, academically and in my personal life and in my athletic life, I'm my biggest critic. I don't. I'm always. I wouldn't say second guessing myself. I'm always asking myself, could I have done that differently, or how can I do something better than I've ever done it before? So I don't look at myself that way. It's a mystery to me. It's like whatever I do, I reflect back on it. I say, well, I could have done that better.
Right. Interesting.
So, I don't know.
Because clearly what it is that the people, when they think of you, they think of someone who's a really good teammate. Clearly there are parts of who you are, your personality wise, that make it easy to be your teammate. The bar that people have to jump over to enjoy themselves with you is relatively low.
Well, okay, there's something about, I just had this discussion with someone recently, a work colleague in my business, talking about this person was lamenting to me that another colleague, that she was experiencing anger from another colleague. And I just said I said, anger is such a useless emotion. And that, I believe that. So I
never seen you angry.
No, I don't ever get angry. And maybe there's okay, this might be part of it, that even though I'm not saying other people in adventure racing get angry, there are degrees of, you can sense anxiety, you can sense an unwillingness to communicate, in some people that's maybe there's like a step ladder, and at the top of the ladder is anger. But I'm just a person who does not allow the emotion of anger to enter my persona. So therefore, if there are other stepping stone emotions, you get into a bad situation and you're unhappy or you're frustrated, my natural inclination is to steer around or out of it.
Gotcha. To solve the problem.
So maybe, yeah.
And so therefore, so race directors, other racers know that when you work with a new racer, that person will be safe under your care because you're not going to expose them to those kinds of emotions.
I think that might have something to do with it. Yeah. Yeah. So thanks for the opportunity to self-analyze.
There you go. I believe leave your copay on the way out the door. Our first race together, you and I it was a 30-hour race. I remember we came off the water after the paddle. You were better with names than I am. I remember when we were getting on our bikes and it was going into darkness. And remember now, this was my first race, thinking to myself, there is no bed in front of me tonight. and I could count on one hand how many times in my life I had gone through the night for something, right? We all stay up late when we're younger.
Yeah.
The idea that I was going to be called upon to do all of this. And I remember us pedaling up into the hills.
Oh yeah,
remember that with that
as
the
darkness
that we had and all of that.
Yeah, after we got kicked out of a restaurant when you tried to score.
Tell that story. Tell that story.
Coffee.
Yeah. What happened there?
We crashed. Well, we
were Woodstock.
In our years of racing, we have. I don't think there are many adventure racers who could say this. In the middle of a race, we have crashed 2 weddings.
Yes.
You and I.
Yeah.
That was the first one.
Yes.
They were getting ready for a wedding, and people were all dressed up, and we came past the restaurant or whatever, it was a big restaurant, and we saw that there was a back door.
Right.
We went over to the back door, and you poked your head in and said, "Hey, any chance I can get a cup of coffee?"
Right. And they said no to me. And I said, wait a minute, the coffee's right there. I could see it. And I think they might have brandished the e-cleaver at me. And then we decided to head out to the night. Yeah. And then the second time was at Rootstock Racing's Two Rivers race in Wilmington, Delaware.
In Delaware, yeah.
We were on our bicycles. We were cruising down the water wherever we were. Yeah, and the bride was taking photos.
Yeah, there was a whole bridal party was there taking photos, and it was on a promenade, and we were. It was a logical part of the course. You could either scramble over some lawns or you could take the promenade. Right. And we came right up to them, and they welcomed us. Yeah. They said, "Come on, take photos with us."
They were delighted to see us, and that was the same race, if you remember correctly, that we were in the city. And there was a gentleman who was unhoused. I offered to buy him breakfast. And he said, "No, I'm good.
Right.
Do you want a cup of coffee?" And then he offered me a cigarette.
Yes, that's right.
And I was like, "Thanks, buddy. I'm good. I'm going to keep racing now." So you look back at all these memories and all these stories that you have and all that you've done over the years. What else jumps out at you as a key core memory that you like to talk about when you think about your adventure racing?
Getting through the 4.7 mile river swim in 53-degree water in the 2-day tango.
And that was just you guys in the water. There wasn't a safety boat. It was just you out there.
No. Each participant had to have a canoe escort.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, so it wasn't truly a wild experience that way.
No, but just being in that freezing cold water, and I had a full body wetsuit. I had
the cap.
I had gloves, and you were allowed to wear a PFD.
Right. They would keep you safe no matter what.
I mean, the good swimmers didn't, but I was. Sure, I'll take it.
We did that. We did the one race. We did the Jersey Inferno. We're out in the middle of the swamp.
That's right.
We did that with the swamp, and we saw the bear out there.
Yes.
And then we came back, and the bear had torn the flag. And we were actually jumping along the swamp, and we were up to our neck in muck and gunk and having time of our lives.
We were going through that, and I just kept thinking to myself, there was a scene in a movie, I think it was The Bridge on the River Kwai, where these guys are going through something similar, and one of them said, leeches. And I just kept thinking to myself, oh no, leeches.
Adventure racing in all its glory, up to our neck in muck and gunk. It was the kind of swamp where you could be walking on top of it, falling through and being up to your neck in it. Those were the best times.
Boy, it's hard for me to pick out. You've picked out a few right now. But there's something just recently, people would always tell me as I got older, as I became a master, in my 40s and then my 50s and my 60s, you're going to experience a big slowdown. I never did. There was little mini slowdowns in my 40s, in my 50s, in my 60s. I mean, I still won my age group in my late 60s in a trail race.
Right.
And yeah, sure, you slow down, but not as dramatically as people were warning.
You didn't throw the towel.
As people were warning me. However, it's like, oh yeah, you're going to slow down, 15 minutes a mile. No. However, the day after I turned 70, I slowed down 2 minutes a mile.
Right. Off you go.
Boy, turning 70 really, really, all of a sudden it hit me.
But one thing you've done in the past 2 years, as you transitioned away from the adventure racing and the multi-day racing, tell us about the Fool's Rogaine and your involvement.
Well, that's what, when the last thought I had about, memorable experience is what I'm doing now, which is creating the course for the annual NYRA, New York Adventure Racing Association, Fool's Rogaine. And it's called Fool's Rogaine because it's held on April Fool's weekend. It's been anywhere from 6 to 10 hours, and it's pretty much always been somewhere in northern New Jersey. And I think it went defunct for 1 year.
Yeah.
So I said,
COVID.
I said, you know what?
COVID hurt it and fell apart, and the race director moved away, and it was always an early season tester. So as adventure racings go, while it was always a race, it was a Rogaine with that was a bit irreverent. Right? It wasn't a hard. So therefore, it kind of dissipated, but you brought it back.
So so I brought it back, and then now now my favorite thing to do. I mean, I still like to do adventure races. I don't do as many of them. And I've after turning 70, my ability to deal with the sleep deprivation is really diminished. So I'm not sure I'll ever do a 24-hour again. I might, but I definitely won't do any more multi-days. It's just the sleep deprivation makes it too unpleasant for me. But I really like races in the 6 to 12-hour range. I really, really like those. But anyhow, I assigned myself the task of finding an area to create, a new area that had never been used to create the Fool's Rogaine. And I found a lot of them. I was surprised. I found a lot of them within 30 miles of my home. And I love it. I love it. I mean, the Fool's Rogaine that's going to be coming up at the end of March, I've been out scouting and exploring to come up with the course since June. I've spent over 200 hours on the course, just exploring, just finding an area that has trails and then going off trail and finding some old faint trails that was like, why was this ever a trail? It's like nobody's been here. I'm here. Nobody's been here for 10 to 15 years.
Well, I'll paraphrase what you said earlier, that the real excitement is between the trails.
Yeah.
Right. I've done Fool's Rogaines in the past, and the idea that you find these old structures, these abandoned houses.
Yeah.
That at one time someone lived there, but how many years ago was that? The roof is gone. Some of the foundation is still there. Clearly there was a road that's now gone. And here we are discovering it and coming across it.
And there's some old mining areas. So New Jersey was, had there were iron mines, there were limestone mines, and I found some of them. And I tried to look up the history of them. I can't find it.
Right. Lost the time until we came across it. Yeah. Now, this year's Rogaine it's a big race, right? Have you talked about how many checkpoints are going to be on it?
Yeah, this year's Fool's Rogaine I'm just going crazy. So far, there's 110 checkpoints.
Okay, how long is the race?
I'm pegging it at 10 hours.
10 hours?
10 hours, yeah. Okay. It's like whenever I find something that's interesting, I say, that's it, I'm making that a checkpoint. I think that I suspect that a lot of adventure race course designers look at an area and they decide to place checkpoints geographically. It's like, like let's get one in this corner. Let's get one in this corner. Let's get one in.
Well, they back into it.
Yeah. I didn't take that approach. My approach is I'm just going out. I'm just scouring. I'm doing a grid. That's why I've been on the course for 200 hours.
Right.
I'm just going back and forth. I'm leaving no blade of grass unturned. And all of a sudden I stumble on something.
Right.
Well, this is interesting.
Okay.
Guess what? This is a checkpoint.
Right.
Now, what that means is there may be some areas where there's a dozen checkpoints that are real close together. Right. I don't care. That's okay.
Exactly. But to your point,
and then there are other areas where you'll go a mile without coming across a checkpoint because I couldn't find anything interesting there.
With a 10-hour race and 110 checkpoints, but you still say it's a beginner-friendly race.
Definitely.
And what makes it beginner-friendly?
A lot of the checkpoints are not difficult to find. Okay? They're
but still with that many, it's a challenge for the most experienced.
Yeah. And a lot of them are not that difficult to find. But then the challenge is, I haven't scoped out the distance. I think it's longer than any of the previous ones I've done. So, the challenge, it's last year, the top teams did the 10-hour race, the Fool's Rogaine, in 6.5 hours. Well, okay, it was still a challenge for them because they were going as fast as they could.
Right. And you had some serious racers coming.
Well, I had some, yeah, definitely. Some of the best racers in the East were in that event.
Which is a pressure all its own.
Yeah.
Right, because I'll let you know if it's not a good course. And so clearly what you've done is that this is now the next chapter for you. That you love doing this.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I'm going to keep doing it. I definitely plan to keep doing it.
So we had a chance to talk a lot about who you were and how you got into ultra running and adventure racing and course directing and designing. Mm-hmm. Are there any questions that I didn't ask you that you thought I was going to ask you about? Or anything you want to tell us that I didn't?
The fact that my business, my career is tied into all this.
Well, what you've done is you've fashioned a life out of all this, haven't you? Because you certify courses now.
Oh yeah, I've been doing that. Oh God, I've been doing that I've been certifying courses, maybe road courses. My specialty is event production. I've been a contractor for course operations for a lot of road races, including New York City Marathon. I'm currently the course director for the Broad Street Run and the Philadelphia Marathon in Philadelphia. And I do course operations, infrastructure for, and also the brand new Jersey City Marathon. So I managed to parlay my passion for running into my career. So that took a while.
Right.
That took a while.
As somebody who, in your 72 years, right, and you've decades and decades and decades of racing and race directing and being a teammate and all of that, when you look at the marathon, the ultra runner, the adventure racer, what is it that you see in them as a racer that you most respect?
Oh, you asked some tough questions. Persistence, patience, perseverance, 3 Ps. There's always challenges that either you weren't expecting or that they're similar, but they're not the same. It's not boring.
Right. There's a new challenge.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes.
Yeah.
Right. And you see it previously.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Let me ask you the reverse of that question now. Having been such a teammate and been such a leader in so many ways, where do things fall apart for teams? Where do they fall apart for racers? If the new racers listen to this podcast, what is the warning that you want to give them that they have to avoid when they're racing?
Be prepared for the unexpected and be prepared for the unpleasant. Imagine something that you might run into that you are going to find unpleasant, and make sure that you're able to use your own inner strengths and the strengths of your teammates to get yourself through it.
Gotcha. When we had you communicated with me prior to this, you sent me a quote that you wanted to talk about, and I'm going to read it to you and give us your thoughts on it. The secret to racing well in ultra-endurance events is not to see how much pain you could withstand. In a sense, it's the opposite, to see how much pain you could avoid. Explain that.
Okay. I think a lot of people look upon ultra running as a masochistic activity. You see how much pain you can withstand. And my rebuttal is no. Ultra running and really long distance running in general, or endurance sports in general, provide you with, okay, all right. I know what. Okay, the phrase that I like to use is discomfort management. That's a really key phrase. Discomfort. You will experience discomfort. Well, you know what? You're going to experience a lot of discomfort in your life in general, no matter what you do, in your career, in your family. That's part of being human. So you deal with it. You manage it. If you're a runner, if you're a pure runner, and you get injured during a race and you feel the injury, it's different than feeling sore, than feeling like you're slowing down, like feeling that you can't do it anymore. If you feel the injury and it's an injury, you stop. You don't push through it. You could push through discomfort.
Right.
And sometimes you don't push through it. Sometimes you finesse it. You get yourself through it.
You learn to live with it.
Yeah. You learn to live with it and you learn to manage it.
Right.
And by managing it, I mean overcome it. I don't know if that's too philosophical.
Well, that's what I think. You capture that in essence, right? You recognize the fact that from a bigger picture perspective, anybody who wants to live a comfortable life is kidding themselves. But in reality, there's going to be discomfort along the way. And it's the grace in the way in which we manage that discomfort that gets us forward. And it's something that you see in your racing and in your life and in all of your pursuits. And
you can accomplish things that you never would have dreamed you could accomplish by managing the discomfort instead of, just wallowing in pain. Wallowing in pain. And I've come across people who think that long distance running is wallowing in pain. Well, for some people, maybe because they're not doing it right. But those kind of people do similar things in other aspects of their life. No, it's not. That's what I meant. It's not to. If you're going to have a successful race, you're going to get to the finish line, and you may be spent. but you're not injured. You're not hurt. You've suffered, but suffering is part of life, and you've managed the suffering.
Thank you to Dan for coming on to the show. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. As I always like to say, if you keep racing, we'll keep talking. And with guys like Dan in the world, we're going to keep adventure racing. He's great for the sport. He was great to have on. Thanks for being here, and enjoy your racing and your training, and we'll see you out there.